I just saw Mark for the first time in years because they played our 25th anniversary show in January, and they were crazier at this show than I ever remembered them.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Hopeless Records was founded in 1994. The label's artists are generally considered to fall under the genres of punk rock, pop punk, post-hardcore, and alternative rock, but some also include elements of heavy metal. Some of their most well-known artists include All Time Low, Sum 41, Avenged Sevenfold, Thrice, Yellow Card, Ann Arbor, blah, 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 blah. Now, the reason why I wanted to interview Lewis, who is the owner of Hopeless Records, is not because of those bands. It's because of the bands that I listen to and most likely the people who are listening to this podcast listen to in the late 90s. Bands like Heckle, Mustard Plug, Dillinger 4, Digger, Against All Authority, 88 Fingers Louie, Adam and His Package, and a bunch more. I think my favorite thing about Hopeless was their video comps because it gave a face to the bands that we didn't see back then. All we had back then was maybe some photos of the bands in the CD artwork, which was kind of rare, unless it was like, I think the only CD I remember where there was a shit ton of photos of the band was Slapstick when they put their last album out, and there was like a collage of all these shots from like the fireside or their last show. And the thing that I love that Hopeless did was it gave a face to the bands in these videos, and it showed us what they looked like, and it also gave me an interpretation of like what the California scene looked like, and it's just like picked these pockets around the country and said like this is who we are, this is our attitude, this is our style, this is what we look like live, and so on. So luckily by doing this podcast, I've opened up more conversations and interactions and whatever, like referral connections to other people. So luckily, I got referred to Dennis from 88 Fingers Louie. Dennis is like fucking awesome. I don't know if anyone's like Facebook friends with him or whatever. Like Dennis is one of the nicest dudes, and I just reached out to him. I was like, "Hey man, like, do you happen to have a connection to Hopeless? Because I really want to interview them." And I think within like I don't even know, like a fucking day, Dennis sent an email to Lewis and was like, "Hey man, this is Mike. We did an interview. Here, check it out. You should talk to him." Then like that was it, and it was just like this awesome, friendly referral. And Lewis replied, he's like, "Yeah, fuck yeah, I'll talk about the late 90s." And I was really excited. So I was able to get him on the phone. Now, this is probably one of the shorter interviews because Lewis is very busy. And he hit me up. He's like, "Yo, it's like, I got like maybe 40 minutes to talk." And I was like, "Whatever, I will rapid fire fucking questions at you and we'll do this." And he was like, "All right, cool." So got him on the phone, and this is what we talked about: the band Heckle, filming videos for No Effects and Guttermouth, figuring out how to put out a record, what was Guttermouth like, the sampler CDs, what they did to stand out in the industry, Davey Tiltwheel, Napster coming into the picture, and a ton more. As always, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to thiswasthescene.com. You can buy some merch, you can donate, and you can refer this to some people. You can leave a comment and share it or whatever. It really is helpful. I know that a lot of people are typically driving when they hear this, or they're probably doing some yard work on a Saturday or some shit. But like, no joke, if you've been listening to this for over a year, I'm just gonna ask a favor. Go on to iTunes, leave a review, give me some stars because this just gets the shit to get in front of more people. And buy a t-shirt if you want to, send a donation if you want to. That's like, that's up to you. I'm not gonna sit there and be like, you should fucking give me money. But definitely sharing it on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever the fuck. Email a friend and be like, yo, this talks about that scene that we grew up on. You should listen to it because it's super helpful in just spreading the word. And yeah, so that will be the last thing I say. Again, feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who you know who will love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I have you. Thanks for giving me some time today, man.
So good to be here and to be talking with you.
Yeah, usually I will kind of chat a little bit, just to kind of, because you have no idea who I am. So I usually will just kind of just talk a little bit, but you have a very limited time. You have about 40 minutes, you said?
I have till 12:30. If that works.
Oh yeah. So usually, like I said, I usually kind of talk a little bit and banter, but I think because of the time crunch, I'm just gonna kind of dive into it. Um, have you had a chance to did you get a chance to listen to the episodes or maybe Dennis's from '88?
I haven't heard his episode yet.
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it. But I checked out what the podcast, the history of it, and what you cover. It's very cool.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, again, I appreciate it. But yeah, so the way I structure it is I kind of go back in time, and the whole focus is on the late '90s because that's when I was a teenager and I played in a band and toured and stuff and was a part of the Jersey scene. And the whole podcast started talking about the Jersey scene, but I wanted to branch out and talk to the bands and the labels and people outside of Jersey who were the people that we were looking up to. And Hopeless was a huge thing to us back then because you even had a band from New Jersey signed, Heckle.
Well, we've worked with a lot of bands, but Heckle has actually a special spot for me. I just think that's such an underrated record that we did with them, and I tell people about it all the time. Actually, it's a record I still talk about all the time.
That's so wild. It's so cool to have a record you love that you actually put out yourself.
I love most of them, but some sort of surprise me and go well beyond expectation, and that definitely was one of them.
Yeah.
And it still stands the test of time too. If you listen to it now, not only are the songs great, but the production and just everything about it still sounds fresh and exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm just gonna jump into it and really go back to when you were a kid. And usually I'll talk about what got you into music, but I really want to jump forward to basically just kind of get into what got you into punk rock, and then had that transition into the label. So what what was the song or the band or that thing that you heard that just got you like, holy shit, I have to listen to punk?
Right. My first punk show was the band X at a local club called the Reseda Country Club. It's about 5 minutes from our office. And a friend of mine, uh, his mom was dating a guy that was into punk rock, and he brought us. And it was a life changer. It's the first time I experienced slam dancing, stage diving, and people really interacting with a show. And that got me on the sort of quest of finding what is this, who are the other bands? And it started with more, big stuff like the Ramones. And then later is when I found Maximum Rock and Roll, and there was a whole new world opened up of independent music and punk rock.
How old are you at this point?
I was 15 years old.
So were you involved in like leading up to that? Were you involved in anything like, I don't know, skating or any of those random? There's these different genres people were involved in that kind of led them. There's like, oh, skateboarding, if someone brought this tape and we were skating to it, or some activity they were doing kind of led them to listening to or just getting into this music.
Yeah, I mean, I skateboarded, but that's not where I found out about the music. Um, but yeah, I mean, I did the things that kids do that are typically associated with punk rock, but the music came as really a coincidence through the friend, and then just doing research on my own, and then I became really the person telling other people about the music.
Okay. So like, did you try to play music yourself?
I did. I was in a band in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, but
That's awesome.
clearly was not meant to be a musician. So yeah, it's not a good sign when your parents come in the room when you're practicing and say, maybe you want to be on the business side of this.
So did like at what point again, I usually will kind of talk a little bit more and dive deep, but you've got a very limited time. So how did this transition from getting into loving punk rock? I'm sure there was a bit of time, but at what point did you decide, you know what, I think I want to actually put out like a band's record?
I actually didn't know there were people that put out records. I knew I bought them, and I just thought they magically showed up in record stores. I should have realized that because I understood how business worked because my parents had businesses. but not in music. Um, and my other passion, the one I was going to go that I went to college for, film, I understood there was a business behind that, and there were productions, and I knew people that worked on production. So it was again just a luck that I ran into releasing music. You know, I was directing music videos for bands while I was in film school. The first one I did was for NoFX, and band was playing on the show that we filmed called Guttermouth, and they saw this production and said, "Ooh, we want one of these." So I did a video for those guys, and it was on that video shoot that the guy said, "Oh, we're between labels, and we want to put out a 7-inch, and can you do it for us?" And so I said, "I've never, done that," and they said, "That's okay. No one else we know has done it, and most people we know can't even organize a video shoot like this. So we think you could do it." And I went and bought a book called "How to Run an Independent Record Label" and read it, and called Fat Mike because I knew him from the NoFX video, and I knew he had a label. So I asked him a bunch of questions, and then I put that 7-inch out for Guttermouth, and that it was really just going to be one release. It wasn't meant to be a business.
So real quick, now it sounds like you have a very entrepreneur family or entrepreneur parents.
I do. I mean, we come from a merchant background all the way probably to Eastern Europe in the 1800s. But when my family came over from Europe in the late 1800s, they opened up like a general store in northern Minnesota, and I grew up with my mom running a business, first like an after school program business, and then this other business selling unfun things like casters for chairs. And my dad was running a furniture business and making signs for restaurants like Sizzler.
Oh. So did you feel like there was kind of like you were on the path where you were like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna work for myself?
I knew I didn't know that. I mean, I knew I was passionate about uh, art and mediums that affect people emotionally and affects the way they look at the world. I knew that, and I really just dove into film school not knowing what I was going to do, other than I loved cinematography, and I wanted, my ultimate goal at that time was to be a director. So that wasn't really owning a business. But along the way, I've always done different things that are self-employed. So I think it was more in my nature, but not in my consciousness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I gotcha. You kind of just it's almost like if you do think I think like when your surrounding just looks a certain way, you just kind of go with it without thinking. You're not focused. You're not like it's almost like the fuck am I trying to say? Um, it's like automatic basically.
Yeah, there were things that were yeah, clearly unconscious decisions, and some of them were, but conscious. But a lot of it was just felt natural for me. And so, like for example, when I did the music videos, I didn't go look for a producer. I just thought, oh, I'll just put this video together myself. I didn't even know it was called producing.
Yeah, so like when you was that the video for Leave It Alone?
I did the Bob video.
Oh my God, I love that video. I remember seeing that. Me and my buddies got 10 years of fucking up. Um, when we were actually, I think like when it came out in like the 90s, like 96 or something. And I remember that video was amazing.
That was my first attempt at a music video.
Oh my
So
God.
there's some parts of it that are cool, and there's some parts that are, when I look back on it, that were horrible.
Yeah, but I think just to look back, it's like a time capsule for the people, for the people making it, you're gonna pick yourself apart, but everyone else is just like, oh man, just everything about it is great. And it was funny too because I listened to the NoFX books recently, and they talked about the actual Bob, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
I met him. Yeah, part of my preparation to doing that video was meeting him, which was really awesome.
Wow.
At the time, I mean, it was the most awesome thing I had ever done, which was here's a band that I love I'm actually getting to see behind the scenes what's going on and talking to the band, sitting down, conceptualizing a video, meeting their friends that these songs are about. I was like, wow, this is incredible.
That's amazing. That's so awesome. So when you put out, I'm gonna kind of just rapid fire these, but when you put out Guttermouth's 7 inch, like what was the process that you went through that you had to learn?
Every part of it, really. Had to learn, okay, how do you do the artwork, both the designing and the printing? How do you record it? How do you get that recording onto the vinyl? And so the book was very helpful because it was simple and described things very clearly. But it was a lot of trial and error. And I got lucky. I found good places because of the people that I had already met. So I needed it to record it. So when I talked to Fat Mike, he said, "Oh, talk to Donald Cameron at West Beach," and so I talked to him, and so they recorded that at one of the most famous punk rock recording studios ever. That did all those Bad Religion and NoFX and Pennywise records.
Oh my God.
And that was the first time I'd ever been in a recording studio, and the first time ever doing, recording that I was going to be putting out is in that type of studio. Is pretty awesome.
What were those guys like? Because I just saw them play recently in Raleigh, and it was like a year ago they were on tour. But I remember my buddies saw them play with Face to Face in like '98 in Tramps in the city, and they were nuts. Like, are they pretty wacky dudes or
Which guys, Guttermouth
Guttermouth? Yeah.
or Guttermouth? Yeah, it's interesting. I spent a lot of time with them after I did that video. I used to go down to Huntington Beach and stay at the drummer's house. And back then, they weren't as crazy as what the reputation of their history is. I mean, they put on a great live show, and Mark the
Yeah.
singer would do kind of crazy stuff, bringing people up on stage and doing wacky stuff. But when you like hung out with them and just went to go get lunch, they were just normal, nice guys that weren't crazy. Like they weren't going to like vandalize a restaurant or something like that, or
That's funny.
you know, go to the bathroom on the table at the restaurant. They're not going to do that. They're just normal guys. But I just saw Mark for the first time in years because they played our 25th anniversary show
Oh wow.
in January, and they were crazier at this show than I ever remembered them. That being, then he's the only original member, so I don't know the other guys now, but he definitely seems to have developed a more eccentric persona than when I used to hang out with him.
He kind of grew into his onstage persona, basically.
I think so. I mean, same with Fat Mike, who I haven't talked to in a while too. But I used to hang out with him all the time, also, and how he is like a normal business guy that owned, a label, but had a punk rock background, but super smart, knew when it was time to have fun and when it was time to be serious, and looks to me now like he's grown into the stage
Oh
persona.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing hearing his interviews now in that book. Um, so like when you okay, so you put the record out and you kind of just like learning the stuff on the fly. So like two things, like how did you get him into stores? And then at what point did you go, you know what, I want to get another band and another band and keep doing this?
The way I got the 7 inch in the stores was a combination of going to the local stores and putting them on consignment, just driving them down and saying, well, here's five of them. And then in the book, it had a list of distributors, and I called all of them, and it said, oh, you have to create this one sheet. And so I pasted stuff, cut and copied and pasted stuff on this sheet. And then we had a fax machine, so I had fax it to all these distributors and then call them, and I got a few of them to take it because luckily the band had already put a record out on Doctor Strange and they had a fan base, and
That's
so
right.
I wasn't totally starting from scratch. There were people that wanted this.
Where were you running it out of at this point?
I was doing it out of my rented house.
Wow.
in Van Nuys. Yeah.
So if you go back to like that 7 inch, is that address on there?
Actually, the first copies of the 7 inch have my stepdad's CPA firm's address on
That's wild.
it. Because that's where I would get my mail. I thought, oh, I'll get mail here because that, if I move, it'll go there. But I didn't realize they may move, right? Or he may not work there anymore, right? Or you don't want to have a physical address or something. So
That PO box
later,
is scary.
later copies of it went to we got a PO box in Van Nuys, and that's what's been on all the records since. But the original copies have that Ventura Boulevard address, which was my stepdad's CPA firm, which I worked out of for about 2 years, both the music video production company and the label until 1995 is when we got our own
Gary Place.
Polish Records office. Yeah.
So like at what point did you like after that 7 inch came out and you started getting stores and I'm guessing they started to sell, there was like something that triggered you to go, I'm gonna keep doing this. Like, what was like I was trying to think of how I worded this, like what made you think like, okay, I want to find another band now?
The same thing happened. I did another video for Schlong, and they did the same thing. Oh, you put out that 7 inch. Oh, can you put something out for us?
Wow.
And I said, oh, you guys have that cover of the Fleetwood Mac Rumors album that I love called Tumors. What about you covering the whole West Side Story soundtrack and calling it Punk Side Story? And they said, okay, you pay for it, we'll do it. So that was the second release.
How are you finding all the money to do this?
Usually the videos we would have them play shows, and we take the money from the shows to pay for the video, and sometimes there would be extra. As far as the pressing of the records, I borrowed the money from my brother and his friend.
That's wild.
And so they're still investors in the company.
Oh wow, really?
Having put up the money initially. Yeah.
Jesus. How did you like what became your criteria for saying yes to signing a band?
Well, at this point, they weren't really being signed, right? Because these were one-off projects, and the criteria was they asked me to do it.
Okay.
So that was the criteria, and I already loved them because I was doing music videos for them. The third thing I put out was a video of all the videos I had directed, along with some of my friends' music videos, and it was called Cinema Birte, and I think it was probably the first of those, of like a compilation of music videos that was on a VHS tape that you could buy at a record store.
Wait, what? Because I remember Cinema Beer Nuts and Cinema Beer Goggles. What was the first one?
Cinema Birte was the first one.
I didn't even know there was that. God damn it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a takeoff of like Cinema Verte, the cinema style. Thinking I was cool being in film school or something. Anyway, so that has Bob on it, and I think the first Guttermouth video, 1 2 3 Slam, and a few others. And so it really wasn't until 95 when I decided to do the label full time and sign artists and make it a real thing. Because before then it was just a hobby because people were asking me to put stuff out, and the release because no one was, it's hard to find these videos.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find a way to do that. And then in 95, the transition came, probably sped up. It would have taken time, or maybe it never would have happened, but I started to lose my eyesight from an eye condition that I was born with, a genetic condition called retinitis pigmentosa. And so by this time, the filmmaking became very challenging, while at the same time, the releasing records was going very well.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, you know what, these mediums I'm passionate about both. They're very similar. They affect people in similar ways. Let's make a go at music instead of film. And that's what I did in 1995.
I kind of felt that you guys, because anytime I would, where we would buy records would either be a local record store or the easier place around like the late 90s became Hot Topic in the mall. And I remember that there was a bunch of things. There was always like a compilation. So there's like the compilation section, the band section, video section. I felt like you guys filled in all three of those. You had, all your bands were. I felt a lot of them were in on the shelves, and then you had a bunch of compilations that you do, like Hopelessly Devoted to You. Like what were a couple of the beginning, like the first comps that you guys did?
The Hopelessly Devoted was, I think, the seventh release that came out
Okay.
on Hopeless, and
Yeah.
that was really those low-priced sampler compilations were the rage at the time.
Yeah.
You Fat Epitaph, I think Drive Through. Everyone was doing them, so it made sense, and it really was great exposure for especially the smaller artists. But we took it to another level by trying to figure out ways to get them more noticed, and we'd make counter displays and get them into places like Hot Topic, or we'd put like a foil wrap around the CD case that was like a neon color or silver or something like that that would make it really noticeable.
Was there like, because when I thought of Hopeless, I put you guys up there with like, because it was Fat, Epitaph for the big labels, and I felt like your name, that and like Asian Man were big names to me. Did you find that as a record label and treating it as a business that there was a bit of a competition to get your bands bought more than the other record labels?
I think we were more of a community than competitors. I guess there's some competition,
Like
but
a friendly competition.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, since I was the small guy, I just felt good being part of the community. So, and I probably wasn't a threat in any way to an Epitaph or a Fat because we were, so small. But yeah, I didn't feel a competition. I felt like, wow, this is cool. We're all getting to put great music out and be part of a community that we're all hoping to build and expose more people to it.
Did you see in the late 90s when things really started to boom? Like, did you notice that? Was it like in your face?
It's a good question. In hindsight, it's hard to tell whether it was so obviously. Clearly, the community was growing. I mean, you could see shows getting bigger and uh, sales going up. So it was pretty obvious. But I don't know that back then I was thinking to myself, wow, we're in a genre boom and we better double down now because this is the time.
Yeah.
I just think we were just continuing to do what we were doing, going, wow, this is great. More people are getting into this kind of music, and that gives more opportunities for these artists.
What was like a day in the life like back then for you guys at the label? Like around, I'd say like 98, 99. Like what would that look like?
So around that time, we I think had 4 or 5 people sitting around in one open room, and we did have defined roles, but at the same time, 4 or 5 people have to do 10, 20 things, and some of which may overlap with each other. So a lot of talking back and forth about what we need to do, what's going on with records that are in progress, and what's happening with ones that are already out that we're trying to expose more people to, and what else could we be doing? We thought of doing so we'd add things like, oh, let's put a catalog in all of our records so when someone buys one, they learn about all the other records, or let's put out a zine because instead of trying to sell people just by saying, hey, this is for sale, why don't we help get them to know the bands better by having interviews or things about the label so they they get a sense of what our philosophy is and why they'd be interested in being part of what we're doing.
That's so smart. That's
So
so
we did
smart.
that. The one thing I do remember doing around that time is we were selling direct to stores too. We had distributors, like regional distributors, and we had one national distributor. We had some international distributors, but we would have sell direct to all the like really cool record stores across the country, and we'd split it up amongst the 4 or 5 of us, the country, and we'd have a contest with each new release who could sell the most records. I don't remember what we got for winning it. It might have just been a pride thing or something, but
That's
we would
crazy.
uh, we would do that, and I would win a lot of the times because I had the Midwest, and man, we'd sell a lot of records in the Midwest. There was
That's
some
crazy, dude.
incredible stores.
Oh my God. Did was there a band then that you signed where you were like, I can't believe we were able to sign them?
There were probably a couple, but Dillinger Four is
I was gonna
high
say,
on that list. I
yeah,
mean, I just there was everyone was talking about Dillinger Four because of how great that show was. You know how good of a live band they are, and so that was a big one. I mean, I feel that way about Mustard Plug too, even though I don't. It was a different kind of buzz going on around that, and it's different kind of band completely. But they also had a previous record out that did pretty well, and I know Tim Armstrong was looking at them,
oh wow.
from Hellcat, and so yeah, and that record did amazing. I mean, that was our first record to break 100,000 copies sold, and it
Jesus.
was yeah. So that was huge for us.
What like when you did put together the whole Cinema Beer series, like how did you organize all of those bands like shooting videos?
We would get the videos from other people. So I only directed a handful of them, and then we would find, so and so did a video. Let's go see if they wanted to be on this compilation. So we would license that video from the label. Um, so that's how those came together.
It was funny.
But
I was living in San Diego like in 2001, and I ran into Davey Tiltwheel,
that's funny.
and I was like, "Wait, Tiltwheel." I'm like, "Are you the guy who threw up in that Cinema
Yeah,
Beer video?" He's like, "Yeah."
that is so funny.
Because that was the one
That's
thing.
awesome.
Yeah, I remember that. He was like, he's like the
Yeah,
nicest dude, but he's still
yeah.
playing. Like he still goes to Fest, and it's crazy.
Really, that's cool. Yeah, I ran into like San Diego. I guess it's got a bunch of old punk rock people, but yeah, I ran into Josh from the Beautiful Mistake. He
Okay.
was working at Stone Brewery. So
Oh, that's wild. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I actually played in a band. Remember John Cougar concentration camp?
of course.
Yeah, their drummer Mike, he played in a band with me for a second, and when I was living out there, so I was like, wait a minute. And then I guess their big thing back then, when they were touring, like prior to that, there was like throwing
Mm,
haystacks into the crowd. Did you ever notice that?
right.
Kids? That was
Yeah,
that was so
that's funny.
fucking that was a mess.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite band names of all time.
Yeah, yeah, they were good guys. They were actually still played a couple shows back then when I was there. It was like towards the end. Like how did so when it kind of transferred over, like when it tipped over into 2000, how did and I know I'm very aware that you got 8 minutes. How did Napster have an effect on you?
We were one that actually thought it was helping us. Maybe we were wrong or naive, but we thought the more people that hear about our bands, the better. That this wasn't a replacement for records. And maybe if I understood things better, like I do now, I would understand the concept of a replacement of records. But I think most people back then, if they found out about something through Napster and really loved it, they were either buying that record or the next record from the band. So we were just trying to develop the band's careers, and if it meant a few less sales because more people found out about it for free, that was really the same concept as the low price compilation, only you could get everything instead of one or two songs.
Have you found that there's been like an uptick in people actually buying CDs again recently?
I haven't seen an uptick in people buying CDs,
Yeah.
but I definitely seen an uptick in people buying vinyl. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's been growing. But CDs could make their way back around too, the same way vinyl has.
Yeah, there's a record store I go to locally, and they have beer on tap at the record store. So you go in, you're like, "Oh, I'm not really sure. You have a beer, and then you're like, I feel a little
Mm.
good. You walk around, you
Yeah,
buy some stuff, and I walk out. I'm like, oh, good, another 50 bucks just spent. That's great.
perfect. That sounds like a great place.
It's
You know,
amazing. I'm like cranking CDs in my Jeep.
right. That's cool.
Was there like,
Love that.
was there a favorite show that you had attended back then?
Favorite show? There's so many. The ones that are most memorable aren't necessarily the best shows. They're usually ones where there were near misses. I've talked to people about this. I can't believe that people weren't getting more hurt at these shows. I mean, the level of violence that was going on in the early mid '90s and probably even into the late '90s at shows. I did get hit once with brass knuckles at a Green Day show, but
Jesus.
I other than that, I mean, I remember being at a No Effect show at this place, the Palomino, walking in the bathroom that was full of blood that someone got, beat up. You know, there's a lot of shows like that. There was a show in a festival out in Chino Hills Outdoor Festival that Face to Face and Voodoo Glow Skulls were playing that there was a shooting and someone, I don't know if the person died, but someone got shot. And, things like that. I remember now that I'm an adult and I have a kid, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I was doing that.
I feel like California was way more aggressive than the East Coast. I mean, well, granted, we had DC and like New York was pretty crazy, but California always thought it was, it was nice and sunny and palm trees, and everyone I've talked to from out there, like, dude, it was fucking scary.
Right. Yeah. The other ones I remember is because I'm a pretty mellow guy. You find me in the back, drinking a beer and enjoying the music.
Yeah.
But I've only had three stage dive experiences, so I remember those real clearly too.
Nice. A couple more questions on. I will wrap this up. Was there ever a
Sure, we'll
point?
do a part two sometime if you want to do it. I'm so sorry that
Oh, hell yeah,
I gotta
dude. Yeah.
go.
Oh, I'd totally
But
be about that. Was there ever a point where you thought like you saw there that it was like a dip in sales where you were thinking, I don't think this is gonna last, and then all of a sudden you caught the wave again? Because you guys have really gone like, there was the punk rock era, but I was looking at the bands you guys have now, and there's a lot of big bands that you guys have signed. So was there a point though before that where you almost thought like this might have to end?
lucky enough, no. We've been a slow and steady
Wow.
label, so we've been profitable each year, but we've never had one year where things were huge and then we, you know, uh, put in a huge amount of money the next year because we thought every year was going to be like that. We never experienced some kind of boom, so we haven't had a bust. It's
Nice.
just been a slow. It's just been a slow climb for 25 years.
Is there ever a point where you're gonna have the Cinema Beer series out somewhere for people to watch again?
We should. I have to look if we have. This is the part of having a real business now. I have to look if we have the rights for streaming and things like that. But yeah, I think it'd be awesome to bring those videos back.
Yeah, because I was talking to Dennis from 88 about that. I'm like, dude, I was looking up I've won and it's
Yeah,
gone. He's like, I know. He's like, I know. It's the whole like content, the streaming. And I was like, yeah, I totally get it. I was like, but damn it, I was so pissed.
yeah. We should definitely make sure those videos are available. At least the ones we have rights to. Um,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, definitely do that.
all right.
All right. So, and this one question before I ask the last one. What would you like to plug?
Well, we also run a nonprofit organization called Subsidy, where we connect bands and fans and causes they're passionate about. And we have a new project that we launched last year called Songs That Saved My Life, and it's bands covering a song that got them through a tough time in their life. We have them give a testimonial about why they picked that song and how it got them through that time. And we donate proceeds from that project to mental health and suicide prevention charities. And we're hoping bands talking about this and being open about their mental health issues and about their struggles will help their fans realize they're not alone and that This is not a rare occurrence that people go through these things, and we need each other to help each other out. That's what a punk rock community is all about. So songs that save my life, that's what I like to plug.
That's great. I love that. All right, so last question. I ask this in every interview, and if I do have you back, maybe you can change, your answer. What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
It depends how you define scene ethics, but I just mentioned one of them. We're
Yeah,
all there for each other. We pick each other up when you fall in the pit. So that's clearly still ethic here. But we have a list of principles on our wall, and I think some, if not all of them, are also scene ethics. Things like keeping your promises, things like being a good person, being respectful and kind to people, being inclusive, understanding that the community is bigger than yourself, stuff like that.
nice. All right, man. Well, that pretty much gets you about a minute left.
You're a professional.